Let's go. What do we got, John?
This?
First one. What do we got?
So Apple will hit a $3 trillion market cap, and Microsoft will achieve the same milestone not long after.
Yeah, Apple's going to hit a $3 trillion market cap in Q1.
I'm going to go believer on Apple. I'm going to go bullshit on Microsoft.
In 2022.
You're basically betting,
You're basically betting. Here's my thought process. You're betting, do they raise interest rates? And if they raise interest rates, do tech stocks sell off? If they raise interest rates and tech stocks sell off, Microsoft doesn't make it because it won't move up enough in time. But Apple probably still has, another couple of weeks and they can get there. But if they don't raise interest rates, then tech stocks don't sell off, party continues, and they both hit it.
Okay. The S&P 500 will rise, with Goldman Sachs predicting a 9% gain for 2022.
I'm going to go with believer.
So it's just going to be positive is essentially what we're saying?
Yeah. I'm going to say believer, but the only thing that I'm going off of is the historical return of the S&P 500 is like 8-9%.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that, it's likely to do about historically what it's done, which isn't really that big of a prediction.
Banks and one of the world's largest banks just took the average basically and said this is what we think is going to happen. So yeah, I'm on board with that.
The odds are against us.
Lost 6.2% in 2018.
Yeah, no, of course, the stock market definitely goes down.
And 2008, they lost, there's
40%, 38%.
But historically, it has averaged, that's 7, 8, or 9%. So if you just say it'll rise, the chances are more likely than not, yes, I'll vote for this.
This is going to be the test. Can stocks really go up forever?
Well, they're definitely going to go up forever over long periods of time. It's just a matter of what happens in the short term of a year. But yeah, so are you a believer or bullshit?
That the S&P will be up close to 10%.
Well, let's say
it just goes
first,
up.
It just
says
positive.
will rise.
Yes.
All right, next. Inflation expectations remain high. According to Bloomberg survey of 47 economists, well, you don't need to survey them, as the world works through supply chain constraints.
Yes.
I don't think that this inflation is going to remain high because of the supply chain constraints. Actually, in some crazy way, there may be inventory issues where they have too much inventory. But I think inflation remains high, depending on what your evaluation of high is. Let's say 2% or more is high. Then inflation is, in my opinion, definitely going to remain high. But it's more because of undisciplined monetary and fiscal policy than it is because of supply chain.
You call it supply chain. You call it price gouging, whatever you want to call it. But I'm on board with that. It's going to remain high, yes.
I agree as well.
All right, next.
Global box office will jump to $33 billion, 58% year over year, but the film industry will, sorry, I was switching back and forth, but the film industry will have to wait until 2023 to reach pre-pandemic levels of $40 billion.
This all depends on China.
How do you...
China is probably the biggest market for film now. Like a lot of these films that launch end up making most of their money in China. So one, there's tons of censorship that happens in order to get your film approved to be distributed in China. Yeah, shout out. I know the facts. Chris Fenton, who used to be a very large film executive, was on my podcast and he talked a lot about how they'll do things like if you have anything that could be negative towards China, not good.
China is a massive market for U.S. movies. And not only that, there's a period of, most people don't know this, and I don't know the exact facts and the dates, but there's a period of the year in China where they don't show American films. They don't show any films outside of Chinese specific films. So they only play films that were made in their own country. It's supposed to basically like promote their own stuff. But ultimately, like sometimes it's at like really bad times for films to be released here. So there's like a schedule, and all of the movies here know it, obviously, that when you produce a film or you release a film, like you got to get it in China, 1, and then 2, it's got to be in this certain period of time.
We had John Cena apologizing.
Yeah,
they took a badge off of Tom Cruise's jacket because he had like a Taiwanese badge or something on one of his jackets in a movie. Like there's a lot of crazy shit goes on. So ultimately, this number just depends on China, and I actually think that the geopolitical ramifications have more of an impact on this than consumer demand. Consumers want to watch movies. We know that, right? And there's no reason why they're not going to be watching as many movies as they were before that they, in 2022. I think ultimately the geopolitical situation, if all of a sudden we get into a U.S. versus China and that starts to get ramped up and China pulls on the lever of how do I inflict maximum pain on the U.S., cool, your movies aren't going to get distributed here anymore, and you wipe tens of billions of dollars of revenue from that industry. That's a pretty big chess move.
The EU becomes the world's most important tech referee. While U.S. antitrust bills are stuck in Congress, regulators in the EU and UK will continue to bring antitrust cases against big tech.
Fuck the EU. Bro, what? Bullshit.
Casey Newton.
No, I understand that. And actually, Casey Newton is very intelligent and actually has pretty good thoughts usually. But like, who cares what the EU has to say? Nobody in the United States cares what the EU has to say. They all these data policies, all this nonsense, all this bullshit, whatever. That's why everything's becoming decentralized. Is people literally don't care anymore. The EU is playing a game that they can't win, where they literally keep coming out and they're like, oh, you have to disclose this, you have to do this, you have to do. Guess what? The companies just say, okay, fine, whatever. And then they change the terms and conditions, or they add something that you opt into, or they do something differently or whatever, right? But ultimately, the free market is going to be much bigger of a determinant of the success of these tech companies than what the policies of the EU are. The EU just isn't that big of a percentage of their user base.
Following El Salvador's lead, other countries in Latin America, such as Panama and Paraguay, could make Bitcoin legal tender.
Could make, yeah.
We're gonna say will make.
Yeah. I don't know about legal tender. I think that that's like a pretty big bar in a lot of these countries. What I will say is that they will adopt Bitcoin, and that could take many different forms. Legal tender is one of the things that they could do, in my opinion. But also they could start mining. They could give it to citizens. They could put it on their balance sheet. Like, there's a world where a country puts Bitcoin on their balance sheet but doesn't make it legal tender. So technically this would be false.
Wrong, yeah.
But I think the spirit of it is that these countries are going to adopt it. And I'll say I'm a believer on that.
Yeah, okay. I think about it the same way.
As a quick funding vehicle, decentralized autonomous organizations will become as hyped in 2022 as special purpose acquisition companies were in 2021.
They already are. Not that they are the SPACs, or not that they're legitimate, but they already are as hyped. There's literally every day I log on to Twitter, I see someone trying to do something with a DAO.
There's probably more DAOs than there are SPACs.
Yeah,
on an aggregate number.
DAOs overrated or underrated?
Overrated in the short term, underrated in the long term.
Yeah, I
actually think that there's a likelihood that they come under legal scrutiny in like a very material way. Like, yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a lawyer.
Crowdfunding.
I'm not a lawyer, but you can't say, hey, everyone, put your money in a pot, and then you're going to get a token in exchange, and then we're going to go do something, right, and the token price is either going to go up or down, and say that that's not a security. So I think that's going to be a hard sell. Again, I think that over the long term, we're drastically underestimating it. But it all goes back to this idea that right now, all people are trying to do is they're trying to take this idea of a decentralized autonomous organization, and they're trying to have it replace a company or replace a entity. Like, that's not how technology works. Instead, what people should be doing is saying to themselves, what is it that uniquely is unlocked from a user experience or a utility standpoint by this type of vehicle that is now available or possible that previously wasn't? And so if you go back to like Uber only happens because the iPhone comes out with GPS in it. Before that, phones didn't have a GPS in like a mainstream consumer way, and therefore you couldn't have Uber. But the second that this device came out and had GPS in it, now all of a sudden the driver and the rider both have GPS. We can have them meet. And so the same thing here is you got to think about what is the native use case? What is the native thing to these technologies? Not how do we just get around starting a company, right? Yeah, I get it. It's faster. It's cheaper. It's all that stuff for sure. But it's also probably in the gray area from a legal standpoint. And so you're trying to just use new technology to replace old things. Like, no, it's what's the new thing? What's the native thing to it that now is empowered that previously wasn't? That's where I think the real value is. So short term, drastically overrated, long term, underrated for what people will figure out use cases for it or applications that nobody has even talked about yet.
Apple will acquire a film/TV studio to better compete with its streaming competitors. Will Apple get basically into this, like full into the streaming and content producing game?
I don't think that this is that controversial.
Yeah, they will.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I guess maybe they don't have a studio themselves, but don't they acquire films, and don't they already make their own, or no?
I think so, but do you think it's smart to basically continue on the path that they're on and make their own films internally or go acquire a new company?
Someone said this is like a who cares thing.
EV makers make money. Companies like Rivian, Lucid Motors, that I believe hasn't delivered a single car to customers. Fisker will finally deliver a meaningful number of cars.
First of all, Tesla already makes money, so it's very clear why they didn't put him in there. Yeah. So yes, true, a believer.
Do you think all these companies start to turn a profit or a major profit?
If I was to sit down and list out and you said to me, hey, Pomp, can you name a bunch of shit coins in crypto? And I just started writing down things I thought were highly, highly overvalued and probably not sustainable. You'd be like, oh, okay, that's the list of shit coins. If you said to me, can you please list the equivalent shit coins in the public markets? The first place I would go is go look at all of these bullshit companies that are trading in the public markets. There are literally companies on this list, I will not name which one, that are trading at like 10, 15, $20 billion valuations. They've never delivered a single car. They're giving you revenue projections for 2027 and they're not profitable by then. And literally investors are out here pimping them like, just like the shit coins say, I'm the next Bitcoin. These guys are like, we're the next Tesla. Like it's literally the same, bullshit. And so when you look at it, I just don't think that the majority of these companies are profitable by the end of 2022. I think the more interesting bet would be how many of these people deliver under 5,000 cars in 2022.
Meme stocks are here to stay as retail traders continue to find stocks to hype up. Do you think that people will just continuously find stocks to hype them up?
I think that meme stocks are not new. Berkshire Hathaway is the GOAT meme stock. You fools literally talk about Berkshire Hathaway like it's a religion. You go on Mecca every year to Omaha to bow down to the equivalent of Jesus and Warren Buffett, and you literally talk about yourselves as I'm a Warren Buffett disciple. The only time I ever heard the word disciple is when I read the Bible when I was like 12 in Sunday school. Literally, Berkshire Hathaway is the meme stock. It's the GOAT. You fools run around and talk about, oh, I'm a value investor. I'm a disciple of Warren Buffett. I'm going to go on my Mecca to Omaha every single year. Like, it's craziness. It is a meme stock and it trades. Talk to a boomer about Berkshire Hathaway, and I swear to God, you think that you offended their God. Like, they get pissed and they trade it. Whatever Warren Buffett does, I'm in. Like, the guy literally panic sold the airlines at the bottom of the pandemic. He's not infallible. Now, I will say for years, he hadn't outperformed the S&P 500. Over the last 12 months or so, he has been outperforming it. So maybe he hasn't lost his touch. They've gotten more into technology. There's a whole bunch of things, but it's a meme stock. It's just not called a meme stock because the boomers didn't know what memes were and they're still running around calling them memes, but it's still a meme stock. It's just from a different fucking generation.